On that fateful day of October 14, 1947, in the heart of innovation and daring, a Bell X-1 research aircraft pierced through the atmospheric veil. It was pilot Charles E. Chuck Yeager who dared to challenge the very concept of limits as he unleashed the power of the XLR-11 rocket engine. A breathtaking surge of speed propelled the X-1 to 1100 km per hour at 13,000 meters, an unprecedented feature. In the realm where sound itself seemed unbreakable, Chuck Yeager's achievement became the echo of history, making the first aircraft to breach the sound barrier in level flight. But as we journey through the corridors of time, the tales take a different twist. Across the ocean, in the heart of Britain, another aircraft, the Miles M52, stood ready to script its own narrative. The winds of fate whispered of a world where a British pilot could have seized the glory, altering the course of history. As we dwell into the extraordinary chapters of innovation and ambition, join me in revisiting the crossroads where the Bell X-1 soared and the Miles M52 dared to dream. The British government published Airman Historical Specification E2443 in October 1943, seeking for an aircraft capable of flying at over 1,000 miles per hour and rising to 36,000 feet in 1.5 minutes. This ambitious specification was established in response to intelligence reports stating that the Germans had flown an aircraft faster than 1,000 miles per hour. These stories most likely refer to the October 2, 1941 flight of the Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet rocket-powered interceptor, in which the test pilot Heinrich Henry Dittmar attained a speed of 1,003 km per hour. The Air Ministry gave the development contracts to Berkshire-based Miles Aircraft Company, which had no prior expertise with jets or high-speed aircraft. They did, however, have an excellent working relationship with the Air Ministry and created the M52, a highly sophisticated aircraft designed from the 1940s. The M52, which was modeled like a rifle bullet, was driven by a W2700 turbojet, which produced 8.9 kilonewtons of thrust and included two distinct modifications. The aircraft was meant to be stable at supersonic speeds, and it represented a huge step forward in aviation. Many innovative design ideas were introduced for the Miles M52 aircraft. The first was a reheat pipe, often known as the afterburner, which is a chamber located after the engine exhaust into which fuel is pumped to create additional thrust. The second element was an augmenter fan that sent extra air into the afterburner, making the engine the first example of the low bypass turbofans that are now used in the fighter aircraft. The X-1's fuel-hungry rocket engine required it to be dropped from a carrier aircraft, but the M52 could take off and land normally from a conventional runway. Albeit normally is a relative phrase given the aircraft's high wing loading and terrifying high landing speed of 270 km per hour. In the event of an emergency, the M52 aircraft has a conical Perpex capsule located front of the engine that may be evacuated using explosive bolts. The capsule is stabilized and slowed by a parachute, allowing the pilot to open the canopy and bail out using their own chute. The cockpit also acts as a shock cone for the engine intake, decreasing incoming airflow and producing a bow shock wave. To postpone the production of the shock waves, the wings feature a small convex cross-section with sharp edges. The wingtips are cut at an angle to fit within the shock wave created by the nose cone, significantly lowering the drag. The M52's most notable innovation is its moving or flying tail, which causes windows to tilt down when reaching the speed of sound. However, shock waves generally occur around the hinges of the aircraft's elevators, rendering them unresponsive. Miles' answer to the fatal transonic regime was to move the horizontal stabilizer, allowing pilots to trim and keep control of the aircraft. Miles modified an M3B Falcon 6 communications aircraft by repositioning the undercarriage to beneath the fuselage and replacing the wings with slimmer wood versions to test the M52's wing design and all-moving tailplane. On August 11, 1944, Gillett Falcon, called the Gillett Falcon, took to the sky and confirmed the engineer's ideas at moderate speeds. A Supermarine Spitfire was adapted for high-speed testing, and it was flown by Navy test pilot Captain Eric Winkelbrow. Americans expressed interest in the M52 program after 90% of the design work had been finished. Miles' principal aerodynamist, Dennis Bancroft volunteered to provide technical data with the British, but the Americans proclaimed their study top secret, thus no data was forthcoming. Construction on 3 M52 prototype began in February 1946, with one about 82% complete and projected to fly within 6 to 8 months. However, because to worries about the pilot's safety and the feasibility of supersonic aircraft, the project was discontinued. The project was cancelled by Prime Minister Clement Attlee's new Labour administration, although it was not announced to the British public until September. The project was reshored by the government, who used one-third size radio-guided models. The M52, designed by Vickers Armstrong and engineers Barnes Wallis, was propelled by an Armstrong Siddeley Beta rocket engine that ran on hydrogen peroxide and hydrazine. The aircraft were planned to crash land in the ocean and not be retrieved, with data broadcast during the flight to a receiving station in the Scilly Isles. The first model was tested on October 8, 1947, but detonated shortly after takeoff. 6 days later, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier in the Bell X-1, employing the M52's all-moving tailplane. A year later, the second rocket-powered variant surpassed the Mach 1.38, proving the M52's aerodynamic design. The de Havilland DH-108 Swallow was the first British aircraft to exceed the speed of sound in a dive on September 6, 1948, with pilot John Derry at the controls. 8 years later, the Fairey Delta II broke the global airspeed record at a speed of 1132 miles per hour, making it the first aircraft to exceed 1000 miles per hour in a level flight and retaining the record for nearly an year. Although amazing, this achievement did not strike the public imagination in the same way that Chuck Yeager's famous 1947 flight did, which a British pilot might have accomplished an year earlier.
Thanks for watching. I have more similar videos on my channel that you may like. See you guys in the next video.